Fun one for you today. Hopped on with Brice of Locked On Rangers. We talked the number 4 overall pick. We talked Evan Carter. We talked what's wrong with Jack Leiter. Enjoy.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On to the Texas Rangers and Locked On MLB Prospects. I'm Brice Paterik, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. Joining me today is Lindsay Crosby, host of Locked On MLB Prospects. Oh my goodness, I can talk so good. Before we get into
that Alabama education.
It's that Alabama education. I tell you what, before we get into today's show, it is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On today's show, like I said, we are breaking down what the Rangers can do with the number 4 pick in the draft. We're talking about Evan Carter, a top 10 consensus overall prospect in baseball, and a little bit about these young farmhands that are no longer farmhands and actually contributing players at the big league level. Lindsay, how are you doing today?
I am good. I do want to point out that as an Auburn grad, I don't sound like that. So just, you have to fire the shots at the Alabama guy whenever I can, it's back there. It's back there.
Yeah. I'm wearing a Vandy Boy shirt. So, I'm all kinds of confusing, and my Texas Tech bias showing out in my Alabama time and my occasional Alabama accent in my Vandy Boy shirt. No one knows where I'm from. Honestly, I'm just an absolutely confusing figure. But I do want to get into the draft. I've talked a little bit about the MLB draft so far, not very much. Most of my draft coverage on my show has been, hey, that Paul Skenes guy is pretty good. And the
Not wrong.
Yeah, not necessarily insightful, but not wrong, for sure. The Rangers had the, I believe, 7th worst record in all of baseball last year and benefited from the first ever MLB draft lottery. They jumped all the way up to the number 4 pick after last year having a 94 loss season, despite having an expected record, according to their Pythagorean record, of 77 and 85. So bad record in actual games, good record in the draft lottery. And it seems like this is if they could jump up in a draft class, I don't think they're going to be in the lottery this year unless something goes just horrendously wrong, which I don't anticipate happening. Even then, it would take a lot. But it seems like this is a pretty good draft class to jump up into the top 4.
Yeah, so coming off of 2020, where you lost that year, you had so many guys that went to college instead. And so the 23 class was seen as a pretty good class. The 24 class is going to be a good class as well. But it's seen as rather deep. And the Rangers were in a weird place because, yes, you have a pick in the top 4, but you also don't have a second or third rounder. And so the slot value for number 4 overall is like $7.7 million, but your entire bonus pool is just under 10. It's a really weird, it's like the 16th largest bonus pool, yet you have a top 4 pick. So that number 1 pick is rather important because 1, you lose the money if they don't sign, but then 2, you don't have a lot of extra funds to go out and buy guys out of college commitments. So you got to kind of nail that number 4 overall pick.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of good guys in the top 5. Am I wrong in saying that there's basically like a top 5 and then that's kind of where the next tier drops off? Or is it just like the LSU guys and then kind of others after that?
Yeah, we always break the draft into those tiers. And the consensus is, yes, it's a top 5. You have the 2 LSU guys, Dylan Cruz and Paul Skenes. They're really kind of at a tier of their own. But behind that, you have Wyatt Langford of Florida, and then you have the 2 prep outfielders, Walker Jenkins and Max Clark. And being at 4, the good news is you're going to get one of those guys in that top tier of 5 guys. The hard part is at 4, there's a clear delineation between, there's 3 college guys and 2 prepsters. And so if someone ahead of you, like if they all go college, if you want to stay in that first tier, you're taking one of the prep guys, and you always have the risk of they sometimes want an overslot deal because they have the leverage of being able to go to college. So it's a good place to be because you're getting them. It's not like you're picking number 6 and you're just out of getting any of the good guys, but you're still paying the money. The A's, who obviously were horrible, they're still at a $6.6 million slot, and they're not going to get one of the tier 1 guys in the draft unless something unexpected happens.
Yeah. So speaking of unexpected things happening, I mean, the Pirates are one of the teams that are ahead of the Rangers, and watching Skenes early on, there were some mock drafts like before the College World Series where he was falling to the Rangers and Texas could pick him. I mean, have those few games really changed his draft stock that much that there's like absolutely no way that Skenes falls down? Because I mean, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. We all know this, but like, I don't know. He was really darn good.
Yeah, he's so I got a chance to see him live this year when he came to Auburn with LSU, and he's probably the most impressive college pitching prospect I've seen since maybe Steven Strasburg. Like, it's incredibly impressive. I think when you get this high in the draft and it's number 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus 4, it all really comes down to money instead of talent and how good are they. And so if he falls to 4, it's because the money worked out in different ways. Like, for instance, my belief as to what's going to happen is the Pirates are probably going to get him a little bit under slot. It's a $9.7 million value for the number 1 overall pick. And the Nationals at 2, it's like $8.9 million. And the rumor is that Dylan Cruz wants to go to the Nationals because his agent, Scott Boras, has a good relationship with the Nationals, and he can get probably about $9 million from the Nationals. About $10 million from the Nationals, whereas the Pirates don't want to go over slot. So I think the Pirates are going to take Skenes. But if he falls, I could see the Tigers doing something a little bit weird and going somewhere else and him making it to 4. I think if he's there, if he gets to 4, it is an absolute no-brainer. You should turn the card in as soon as the Tigers' time is up, whether or not they've picked, and take him, because having seen him in person, I legitimately think Paul Skenes could survive in a major league bullpen right now. Like, I think that's how good he is. And so, I mean, he could theoretically be pitching innings in Arlington in August in your bullpen. That's how good he is. And he could be contending for a rotation spot as soon as next season.
Next season, or like out of camp, or just like at some point in the midseason?
At some point in the midseason. The big unknown, and this is going to come up later if we talk about Jack Leiter, the big unknown is how guys transition from the throwing once a week schedule in college to throwing every 5 days in the bigs. And some of the usage that we've seen him do some starts on major league rest or on short rest and like a relief outing. I think he's going to make the transition okay. From what I've seen, he's held the velocity pretty deep into outings. A lot of the control and things like that haven't wavered like you typically see when a guy gets fatigued. So it's probably going to end up being middle of 24, simply because you want to get him on that routine as far as throwing every 5 days versus throwing once a week. But stuff-wise, I think he would be good enough to contend for a job in a rotation out of spring training. I just think you'll probably give him a little bit more time to adjust. Although we've said the same thing about other guys in the past, and you see what happens. So it's all a big unknown at this point.
Yeah, pitching prospects are always curious, especially one of the Rangers' top pitching prospects, Jack Leiter. We're going to get into him and some interesting prospects that are going in Double-A Frisco for the Rangers. But first, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. Forget all the planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, just 2 taps and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you'll never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, we've talked a little bit about the draft, and one guy who the Rangers absolutely nailed in terms of their draft pick in that 2020 draft is Evan Carter. And I remember my most recent, most often guest, Grant Schiller, who is a prospect writer for Baseball Prospectus, he and I, at the day of the draft, seeing the Rangers' reaction to their picking Evan Carter, they're like, we got one over on everybody. We fleeced everyone. We out-scouted everyone. We are so smart. We are so great. We're like, you morons. You've been so bad at the draft for so freaking long. How dare you pat yourselves on the back like this? And you know what? They should have gloated harder because this guy has been absolutely incredible this season. He had a month where he was dealing with an injury that was not, he wasn't injured. He was playing hurt. He took a ball off the wrist, I believe it was, and he just did not hit for any power in the month of May. Spent some time on the, not the injured list, but the development list. Is that what it was?
Development list. Yeah.
Yeah. And then was eventually moved to the injured list and then played 3 games in the ACL and came back like absolutely nothing's changed. What have you seen from Evan Carter that is in this breakout season for him?
So I do think that Derek Tucker and Ryan Coe, the area scouts who were the ones that saw him in 2020, like they should always have jobs in Texas because they nailed that. They're the ones, like, he didn't have a lot of summer showcase stuff, and then obviously you lost 2020, so he just was a little bit of an unknown, and they went out and found him. But I think that, believe it or not, I think we've maybe been sleeping a little bit on Evan Carter, and it's because while trying to play through the injury, the full season numbers aren't as impressive as what he's done recently. Like, so full season in AA, it's 293, 414, 442 is the slash line, 6 home runs. But when you look at what he's done in the 5 games since he's been back, he's like 8-18, 2 home runs, a double and a triple, 3 walks to 2 strikeouts. So he's playing much better now that he's back. And I think at the end of the day, he's shown that maybe he has a little bit more power than we thought. He was originally, or I guess a lot of the scouting reports amongst the prospect apparatus, so people like me, well, it was kind of seen as average power, maybe above average. And I think it's definitely at least above average power. What I've been impressed with is he's swinging less often than the average hitter in the Texas League. So
have you heard his nickname?
No.
FCC. Full Count Carter.
Nice. I like that. That is really good. That is really good. He's swinging less. It's like 39%, and the average is like 45. But he's making more contact than the average player in the Texas League, and it's because the quality of the hit tool's always been there. It was something where we were waiting for him to kind of add the muscle and turn some of the hard hit balls. I mean, he already had the launch angle. He had the exit velocity. It was just you had to get the power behind it. And I think that him playing through the wrist injury has meant that we haven't seen the power like it actually is there, but it's legitimately there. And I think you're probably looking at a 60 hit tool, 55 power, or possibly a plus power tool. And if that's the case, you're looking at a guy who's probably going to be an all-star at the major league level when he gets there. The question is just because he's missed so much time in so many different years, whether it's the back injury, the wrist, whatever, how long does it take for him to get to AAA and then get to the bigs? That's the real question here.
Well, my answer to that is I don't think it takes him very long to get to AAA. And the fun thing about this Rangers team doing so well right now is that, like, every position, if you go and look at the Rangers roster, the everyday guys, almost every position is pretty much locked down for the next like several years. I mean, you got like catcher, first base, second, shortstop, third, left field, right field, center field, even DH is the only one where there's really like a question, like Garver's going to be a free agent after this year. But like there was a lot of talk in April and mainly April when Evan Carter was killing it, and a little bit in early May. It was like, okay, do they need to call Evan Carter up to go play center field every day? Because this Leody Taveras guy, he had a oblique injury to start the season, and he just like wasn't doing very well. And then in the month of May, Evan Carter, was playing through that injury and didn't do very well. And Leody Taveras hit like 350 or something for a freaking month. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe you don't need to rush this kid to the big leagues.
We've got time.
But like, he is still so young. He is 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until August. And he has already played 52 games, excluding the championship series experience that he had in AA. He came up when he was like just about to turn 20 last year. And in 52 games in AA, he's got 248 plate appearances, an 898 OPS, hitting over 300, on base of 427 and slugging 470. Like, the guy is insane.
At age 19 and 20. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
he can't even buy a beer yet. And he's doing it. Yeah, it's a weird conundrum, right? Because he's doing so well at so young and a limited sample, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, he's had 52 games in the high minors. Like, that's it. And so you see organizations approach this differently. A lot of organizations like their guys to hang out at AA because that is where the most development happens. A lot of organizations like their guys to get to AAA, to get the taste of the big leagues. And so that's the big question here, is what's going to happen. But the good news is, like you said, you don't have to rush. The Texas Rangers are the American League version of the Atlanta Braves as far as
that's the biggest compliment that you could give. Oh my goodness. Wow.
As far as like imposing offense, plenty of power, and you've got so many guys locked up where there's no sort of emergency scenario. There's no sort of urgency that you have to have him up because you've got guys producing at the major league level. It's just, if an injury happens, you may see him, but I think the best thing to do is just let Evan Carter cook. Just let him polish all the edges, get the confidence, and get the experience, and theoretically, or hopefully, I guess, be set up for a Rookie of the Year campaign versus just calling him up whenever. Take advantage of the fact you can get an extra draft pick, especially because the last couple drafts, you've lost a couple draft picks for signing free agents. So let's restock the farm a little bit. Yeah, it's worth it. Totally worth it. But
I think Corey Seager's worth that second round pick with his 1,040 OPS or whatever it is.
No, yeah. It's worked out so far, but like down the road, that ends up being an issue. And back to the Atlanta comparisons, you can see the difference in Atlanta got punished with the international sanctions, and you can see the quality of the farm system drop off because they had less high-level prospects coming in, and then they made trades, and then all of a sudden it's like a 28th farm system in baseball. So, if it's me, I'm holding off on Evan Carter until I can get him a Rookie of the Year race, because I think he'd have a pretty good shot at winning it if he is what we think he is, and he is what I think he is. It's just, let's figure that out.
Yeah, the Rangers might end up having back-to-back AL Rookie of the Years. We'll talk about Josh Young in just a minute, but on that Braves comparison, the one thing that I wish was a more accurate comparison is how well the Braves develop starting pitching, and so far this Texas Rangers team just they really haven't done that. There's not a whole lot of teams that do, and it's really hard to develop starting pitching. But one guy in particular, Jack Leiter, he is on the development list. Can you tell my listeners what exactly the development list is? Because you have a much better understanding of it than I do.
Yeah. Okay. So the development list, think of it as an option to take a player out of competition without them actually being hurt. And there's a couple different reasons you can use it. The first one is just time off, and I think this is kind of what it is. With Jack Leiter, is if you need to manage their innings. The idea is you can put them on the development list for 2 weeks or however long it may be. You usually kind of say what it's going to be when you put them on there, but that allows their affiliate to replace them on the roster. But obviously they're still in your organization. They can still be with that team and work out. You can take them to the complex if you want to, whatever it might be. Sometimes you'll specifically put a pitcher on there so that they can do work as far as changing a pitch or a grip. If they have to fix something, you do that. Or if it's an issue with their delivery, if you notice something that's wrong, you can put them on the development list, take them back to the complex and fix them. But this is just so that you can manage some of the innings. Because if you look at what he's done, he's already thrown 60 innings in the end of June. And last year, for the entire season, he only had 92. So the midpoint of the minor league season is, I believe, today or Friday, one of those two. And so he's on track for 120 innings. It's a significant jump up from 90 last year. So you put him on the list for 2 weeks. You can let him keep working out. You can maybe tinker with some stuff, but you really just give him a chance to take a break so that you don't have to shut him down early at the end of the year. Because you saw it with Evan Carter, the ability to jump up to the next level for the final week of the season and then maybe the playoffs is a very useful experience for a lot of these players. That's the new version of the September call-up, is a team we'll do like Evan Carter did. Send him up for the final week because the ends of the seasons are all staggered by a week, and then let him stick around for the playoffs if he's handling that promotion okay. And I think Leiter's a person who could use a taste of AAA for a week like that, maybe one start, so he can get an idea of how his stuff plays. But development list now, manage the innings, so you're good for that later.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important for him. And yeah, he just needed some time off. Honestly, it's been a little bit of a rough year outside of that really nice month of May. But we're gonna get into happier things about speaking of the Rangers Rookie of the Year race and some other young Rangers that are really breaking out in the big leagues, and how much for real is this breakout for all these guys. But first, this word from our sponsors. Now, the Rangers are full of some young guys who are absolutely crushing it this year. Well, really a team full of guys who are absolutely crushing it. But there's three youngins in particular, including one actual young man, Joshua Young, my boy, 25 years old, finally getting to be healthy, finally getting his chance. Probably could have been an everyday big leaguer a couple years ago, but a couple injuries really set him back. And now we are seeing the greatness of Josh Young. Are you surprised by what he's done so far this year? Because I can't say that I am, particularly outside of his defense at third base.
I was going to say the big thing that I kind of have to give him his flowers is the defense. I was one of the people who was a little bit down, I guess, on his defense. I figured he'd be below average, and I didn't think it was great. I thought it was fine. It just wasn't great, and he's looked really good at that. I do think him getting a little bit of time last year and not having an amazing slash line, 204 batting average, 235 on base, I think that kind of turned some people off to what he would do this year, and it obviously shouldn't have. I mean, he's what, 15 home runs? He's playing fantastic, and he is the leader right now on FanDuel for Rookie of the Year for the American League, and I think deservedly so. He's been really good, and I've been impressed with how he's handled pitching in particular. Just the ability. We always knew that he had some holes in the swing. He had a little bit of chase stuff because he was so aggressive, and he's not really having the swing and miss in the zone that we thought he was going to have, that we saw him have in the minors. And then, so that's been nice. And he's walking more than maybe I thought he would, which I don't know if that's more about me or him.
I think it says more about you.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 20 something walks, but it's just something where he's so incredibly aggressive, and we know how big league pitchers can take advantage of that by pitching you backwards, throwing you off speeds and breaking stuff early in the count, that he's walked more than I thought he would. And so very happy with what he's doing. If all it took was his brother getting drafted, then you'd have just told the kid to declare after high school, if that's all it took.
Yeah, well, honestly, you say he's walking more than you expected. He's walking less than I expected, because when I watched him at Texas Tech, he was a very patient, very polished hitter. He was aggressive, but he was a little bit more patient. He had more walks than strikeouts in both of his final 2 years at Texas Tech. 39 walks to just 32 strikeouts in his sophomore year, and then 53 walks to 43 strikeouts, and on base of 491 his sophomore year, and an on base of 474 his junior year. Also, as a freshman, a 395 on base, just kind of bonkers. And, 1100-ish OPS his last 2 years in college. So I've watched this guy for a long time. I've been a big believer in him and his work ethic, and the fact that I'm not doubting this guy. I'm not putting any limits on this guy because he has such a high work ethic. I give him a comparison, not in terms of the player that he is, but just in terms of the outworking expectations consistently to Paul Goldschmidt, a guy who was drafted out of Texas State, who was just had basically no expectations on him, and just every single facet of his game kept getting better and better and better and better, and everyone's like, okay, I guess this guy's really good. I'm not saying that he's gonna win an MVP like Paul Goldschmidt, but I'm not placing limits on this guy by any means, and I'm really impressed with what he's done so far. And another guy who I talked a lot about, we're recording this on what is today? I don't even know what today is. Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. So the day after Ezekiel Duran just had a 12-pitch at-bat that ended in a go-ahead home run, his 10th of the season. And I was a big Ezekiel Duran guy, but he's got a 900 OPS so far in 220 plate appearances. How much are you a believer in Ezekiel Duran doing things like this? I mean,
the big thing for me is looking at last year to this year is he's got a lot better with making contact against breaking balls. That was kind of his issue. And when you saw him come up last year, he played, he has about a similar sample. It was around 60 games last year, and it's been around 60 this year.
As of right now, there are exactly 220 plate appearances last year and this year, as of this recording, because I just talked about this like an hour ago or 2 hours ago, whenever I recorded today's show.
Yeah. And so, like, looking at how everything's changed, you can almost directly trace that back to he got better at handling breaking pitches, not only making contact in the zone, but also the recognition, laying off the slider down in the way and things like that. We knew the power was there. It was always your power tool is only as good as your hit tool kind of situation. And the hit tool improved more than I thought it would. I've also liked the versatility that he's shown, playing a lot of different positions, obviously. It is valuable when you have just about the entire infield locked up for a decade. And so I mean, he's found a way to force himself on the field. And like, it's something where, I mean, he's played himself into a fantasy relevant utility guy, whereas that's not necessarily, we didn't know if he'd get there or not this time last year. So again, flowers to Ezekiel Duran. Great job on that trade. I know you had to lose your large adult son, Joey Gallo, to do it, but it's worked out so far.
I still haven't admitted. I mean, an unbiased person would say that the Rangers won that trade. I don't know that I can say that and forgive myself for it. But an objective person might probably say that. I won't, but someone would. But the other guy who has done well, I mean, Ezekiel Duran playing shortstop was actually playing it well at the big league level was a huge plus for me. He's still figuring out left field, but the other young outfielder is Leody Taveras, a guy who had a lot of promise for years and years and years. And I think prospect fatigue kind of weared people out on him. And he's still just 24 years old. And right now he's got an 814 OPS and leading the team in terms of qualified players in batting average at 294. Like, what have you seen from Leody Taveras to have this breakout season?
So it's been making enough contact for the power to play up. He was never considered to have great power, right? Like, he was seen as he's more of a contact guy than a power guy, incredibly fast. So the assumption is he's going to be one of those, slap a ball on the ground, beat it out. But he's really good, and he's gotten better at hitting strikes hard. So I'm not going to say saving his bullets, but we're getting to that next level of pitch recognition where you're not looking at ball versus strike, you're looking at strike versus drivable pitch. And so I still think the overall power ceiling, like just the raw power in him, isn't anything special, but he gets it into games because he's done such a really good job. And we knew he was disciplined already, but just a really good job at understanding how a pitcher's going to attack and spotting, this is a pitch that I can do damage on, and then putting it where he needs to put it. So that's been impressive. Obviously, you love the defense. The arm has been as good as we thought it was. The speed is fantastic, but it's really just been the ability to recognize that second level of pitch recognition has been what's taken him to the next level.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely where he's taken that step. I will push back on. I do think the raw power is there, and like it's playing up more in games than I thought. I mean, his max exit velo is in the top 20% of baseball right now at 112.2 was his hardest hit ball this year. Last year he had one at 112.9. Like, whenever he gets a hold of one, and he really gets a hold of one, like, he can put a freaking charge into it. It doesn't happen all that often, but you see that and you think, oh man, with like the defensive floor and like the approach that, shows in flashes, like, man, the ceiling on this guy there's a reason why he was the number one prospect for the Rangers a couple of years in a row.
Yeah. I mean, it was something where super toolsy. The question was, how good could he get it into games? And the assumption was the worst tool was the offensive tools versus the defensive stuff. And so now that he's working out, he's the reason why you can take it slow on Evan Carter. You have plenty of time to figure out, what am I going to do with Evan Carter? How is this going to work? Because Leody Taveras is so good at the major league level. And it's something where you can see them coexisting in an outfield because you're getting enough power production out of both of them, more than people thought when they were prospects. And obviously Carter still is, that you can make it work with them. Obviously you'll have a DH spot you can move a guy to if you had to. It's a great place to be, and not somewhere that we necessarily thought we would be at this point in time last year or the beginning of last season. But be excited, Rangers fans. Like, you got talent in the farm, you've got talented young kids at the major league level, and all these guys are here for the most part long term. So go buy a jersey. You have that insurance there, that comfort.
Yeah, a long-term outfield of Leody Taveras in center, Evan Carter in right field, and Ezekiel Duran in left field, and also wherever Adolis Garcia happens to be, because they've got like 3 more years of control of him as well, and his 19 home runs that he's already got. Maybe he's got 20 by the time this actually comes out, because he is on a freaking tear as of late. But yeah, this is just such a fun turnaround from like all these young players hitting at the exact same time, and like all the big leaguers hitting at the exact same time. Like, this is a great come up for the Rangers, for the near term and for the long term. And gosh, I am just soaking it the heck in, because I don't know how long it'll last, but for right now, everything's good, and I'm going to enjoy that for as long as it lasts. Lindsay, where can the fine folks listening to Locked On Rangers find you and all your work?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. The show is Locked On MLB Prospects, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Come check us out.
Yeah, Lindsay is the best in the business, the best prospect podcast out there. And he occasionally says nice things about Texas Rangers prospects. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.